I never thought one lie would turn my world upside down. Dressing up as a woman to get a job had seemed like a desperate but foolproof plan. After all, the position required a female assistant, and I needed the money badly. I had done everything right, perfected my voice, my movements, even my makeup. And it worked. I got the job. But I never expected my boss to fall for me. And I never imagined that he knew my secret all along. Sitting across from Damian Knight, the most feared CO in the industry, felt like being under a predator's gaze. He was dangerously attractive, raven black hair neatly slicked back, sharp jawline, piercing gray eyes that held an intensity most couldn't withstand. His mere presence commanded power, and at that moment, all that power was focused on me. I forced my hands to remain still in my lap as he studied my resume. The silence stretched, the only sound in the massive office being the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. My disguise was flawless, the wig, the subtle makeup, the tailored blouse that curved in just the right way to sell the illusion. No one had questioned it so far. No one had doubted the woman I had become. Until Damian's deep voice broke through the silence. "You're an interesting candidate, Miss L." My breath hitched for just a second. Did he notice? No, he couldn't have. I had spent weeks perfecting my act. I forced a polite smile, meeting his gaze with what I hoped was confidence. "Thank you, sir," I replied, careful to keep my voice soft and feminine. A slow smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the polished desk, lacing his fingers together as he studied me. "Tell me, Miss L." His gaze flicked to my lips, lingering there for a heartbeat too long. "Do you always wear such bold lipstick to interviews?" My stomach tightened. Was that a test? His eyes held amusement, but there was something else lurking beneath, something unreadable. I fought to keep my expression neutral. "I believe confidence is key in any workplace, Mr. Knight." The silence that followed was thick, charged with something I couldn't quite name. Then, the faintest chuckle escaped him, deep and knowing. "Confidence," he murmured. "I like that." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That was it. The hardest part was over. Or so I thought. Because Damian Knight already knew the truth. And he was only getting started. The office was empty. The only sound was the rhythmic clicking of my keyboard and the steady ticking of the clock. My shift had ended hours ago, but there were reports to finish, and I welcomed the distraction. Anything to push away the nagging feeling that had been lingering in my gut for weeks, the feeling that I was being watched. I exhaled softly, rubbing my temples. The wig felt heavier tonight, the blouse tighter. Pretending was exhausting, but I had to keep up the act. Just a little longer. Then I heard it. The soft click of the office door shutting. My breath stilled. The sound was so faint I almost dismissed it. But then, the footsteps started. Slow, measured. Each step echoed against the marble floors, moving closer. I didn't turn around. Didn't dare. Working late. His voice was a low, velvety murmur. Too close. Too intimate. A shiver ran down my spine. "Just finishing up some reports, sir," I replied, keeping my voice light. Another step. Then another. The air shifted behind me, and I could feel him, towering over my chair, his presence an invisible weight pressing against me. His next words sent ice through my veins. "No need to act anymore, Eliot." My fingers froze over the keyboard. My name, hung in the air like a death sentence. I swallowed hard, pulse hammering. "I don't know what you mean." The chair creaked as I turned slightly, and before I could react, his fingers caught my chin, tilting my face up to meet his gaze. My breath hitched. Damian was smirking. Not the amused kind I had seen before. No, this one was darker. Sharper. Knowing. "Come on now." His thumb brushed against my lower lip, smearing the lipstick. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? My entire body tensed. The proof of my deception stained his skin, a smear of red against his thumb. I was caught. He had known. He had known all along. And instead of calling me out, he had played along. Watched me. Waited for me to slip up. Damian's smirk deepened as he leaned in, his breath warm against my skin. "I knew from the moment you walked in," he murmured. But watching you squirm was too much fun to ruin. My stomach twisted. This wasn't anger. This wasn't disgust. The way he looked at me, the way his grip lingered, it was something far more dangerous. His gaze darkened, his voice dropping to a whisper. Now tell me, Eliot, should I keep pretending? Or should I finally show you what happens when you deceive me? My breath shuddered. This was no longer a game. This was something else entirely. And I had no way out. I thought I had fooled him. But the real game was just beginning. I was trapped. Damian's fingers curled under my chin, his grip firm yet teasing, forcing me to look up at him. His dark gray eyes burned with something unreadable, something dangerous. He had known from the beginning. He had played along, letting me dance on the edge of my own deception. And now, with nowhere left to run, I could feel the shift between us. This wasn't just about catching a liar. This was something else entirely. A thrill of fear and something worse, something shamefully electrifying, coursed through me. "You're not saying anything, Eliot," Damian murmured, his deep voice sending a shiver down my spine. "Is it because you're afraid?" I should have been afraid. But fear wasn't the only thing curling in my stomach. My voice failed me, barely a breath between us. My heart pounded against my ribs, my lips still parted from his touch. Damian's smirk deepened. He was enjoying this, watching me, waiting for me to crumble beneath his gaze. His thumb pressed against my lower lip again, smearing more of the red lipstick I had worn to complete my disguise. "You spent all this time pretending to be someone else," he mused, his voice low, slow. "I wonder, have you ever let yourself just be?" I sucked in a shaky breath as his hand moved slow, deliberate, tilting my jaw just enough for his lips to brush dangerously close to mine. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just a whisper of heat, his breath ghosting over my skin. My body betrayed me. A tremor ran through me, and he caught it. Of course, he did. Damian Knight was a predator, and I was already ensnared in his trap. He let out a quiet chuckle, his other hand coming up to brace against the desk behind me, effectively caging me in. "What's wrong?" he murmured. "You were so confident before, Miss L." A rush of heat flared in my cheeks at the mocking way he said it. His lips finally met mine. Not gently. Not sweetly. It was a claiming. A raw, intoxicating demand that sent a bolt of electricity through my entire body. His grip tightened on my chin as his lips pressed harder, parting mine with an effortless dominance that left me gasping. My hands, trembling and uncertain, clutched at his shirt, fingers curling into the expensive fabric. I should have pushed him away. I should have resisted. But I didn't. Because the moment I kissed him back, the moment I surrendered just a fraction, Damian groaned. A deep, satisfied sound that sent heat pooling low in my stomach. His hands moved, one sliding up into my hair, yanking the wig off and tossing it aside. The other pressed against my lower back, dragging me closer until there was nothing left between us. "You're so much prettier like this," he murmured against my lips. "No more lies, Eliot. Just you." His teeth grazed my lower lip before he bit down, just enough to make me gasp. And he swallowed that sound too, his tongue sweeping into my mouth, tasting, taking. I was drowning, and I didn't want to be saved. His body was solid heat against mine, his suit crisp, but beneath it, I could feel the raw strength he held back. His grip on me was possessive, like he had been waiting for this moment, for me to finally break. And I was breaking. His fingers traced my throat, his touch featherlight, yet it sent shivers racing across my skin. "You've been so careful," he whispered, lips brushing the corner of my mouth. "So cautious." His hand moved lower, tracing my spine, pulling me even closer. My pulse roared in my ears. "But tell me," he continued, his voice a husky whisper, "now that I've caught you, what are you going to do?" I stared up at him, breathless, dizzy, and hopelessly lost in the fire he had ignited inside me. "I don't know," I admitted. Damian's smirk returned, wicked and victorious. "Good." Then he kissed me again, deeper, harder. Like he wasn't planning on letting me go. Like he owned me now. And maybe he did. I had spent all this time running. Now, there was nowhere left to hide. And worse, I wasn't sure I wanted to. My breath hitched as Damian's hands slid down my body, firm, assured, like he had every right to touch me. Like he had already claimed me, and this was just the inevitable descent into something I couldn't escape. Did I even want to escape? His lips were relentless, demanding against mine, his tongue sweeping into my mouth in a way that sent heat curling low in my stomach. My fingers clutched at his suit jacket, desperate for something, anything, to ground me, but Damian wasn't about to let me have control. No, he wanted me undone. He pressed forward, forcing me back until the edge of his desk dug into the small of my back. The cool surface was a sharp contrast to the fire licking through my veins, but Damian didn't stop, didn't hesitate. One of his hands slid up my waist, fingertips grazing the hem of my blouse before slipping underneath. A shudder racked through me as his palm flattened against my bare skin. "You're shaking," he murmured, his lips brushing against my jaw. Nervous? I was, but not because I wanted to stop. No, the way my body reacted to him, so easily, so completely, was the real danger here. Damian. I barely recognized my own voice, breathless and shaky. He chuckled, a low, rich sound that sent a fresh wave of heat through me. "You sound so sweet when you say my name." His teeth grazed the sensitive skin beneath my ear before he bit down, not hard, but just enough to make my breath hitch. Then his tongue soothed the mark, and fuck, I couldn't stop the way my body arched toward him. He took full advantage of it, his other hand sliding around my back, pulling me flush against him. The hard press of his body against mine made my breath stutter, made my fingers tighten their grip on his jacket. I could feel him, every inch of him. And judging by the way his grip tightened, by the deep groan that rumbled from his chest, he could feel me too. "You're already trembling for me," Damian murmured against my skin. "Do you have any idea how long I've waited for this?" My pulse roared in my ears. "Why you?" His fingers dipped lower, teasing the waistband of my slacks, and my words died in my throat. "I wanted to ruin you the moment you walked into my office," he admitted, his voice rough with hunger. "Wanted to strip away every last piece of that ridiculous disguise and make you mine." A sharp gasp left me as he suddenly lifted me onto his desk, forcing my legs apart as he stepped between them. My hands shot out, gripping the edge to steady myself, but Damian wasn't done unraveling me. No, he was just getting started. His lips trailed down my throat, pressing hot, open-mouthed kisses against my skin as his hands slid higher, exploring, mapping, owning. "You should have known better," he murmured darkly, his fingers slipping beneath the waistband of my slacks, teasing. "You should have known I always get what I want." And right now, he wanted me. I had spent weeks lying to him, running from the inevitable. But now, as he pulled me closer, as he stole the breath from my lungs with another searing kiss, I realized something. I wasn't running anymore. I was falling. There was no going back now. And I wasn't sure I wanted to. Damian's mouth was everywhere, hot, consuming, relentless. His hands roamed my body with a kind of certainty that left no room for hesitation. He knew what he was doing. Knew exactly how to unravel me, how to pull me under his control until there was nothing left but the heat between us. And fuck, I was letting him. I should have fought back, should have pushed him away, reminded him that this was a mistake, that I wasn't supposed to be here. But then his hands tightened around my waist, dragging me closer, and my thoughts shattered. "You feel it too, don't you?" he murmured against my skin. I barely had time to respond before his lips were on me again, claiming, bruising. My back hit the desk, and Damian wasted no time pinning me there, his body a solid wall of heat pressing me down. I gasped against his lips, fingers tangling in the fabric of his shirt. His name spilled from my mouth in a breathless whisper, and I felt his smirk against my lips. "That's it," he murmured. "Say my name again." He nipped at my bottom lip before trailing lower, his mouth working its way down my throat, his hands slipping beneath my shirt, fingertips ghosting over bare skin. The touch was light, teasing, too light. A frustrated sound escaped me, and Damian chuckled, clearly enjoying just how easily he had me unraveling beneath him. "Impatient, aren't we?" I glared at him, lips parted, breath uneven. You. Whatever I was about to say was lost when his fingers brushed against a sensitive spot just above my waistband, and my breath hitched. Damian's smirk deepened. That's what I thought. His hands moved with agonizing slowness, peeling away layers, exposing me inch by inch, until the cool air kissed my heated skin. My pulse roared in my ears as his gaze raked over me, dark, possessive, hungry. "You have no idea how long I've wanted this," he murmured, his voice a low, dangerous promise. Then he moved, his lips tracing a scorching path down my chest, his hands gripping my hips with enough force to leave marks. And as his breath ghosted lower, my world blurred into nothing but the heat of his mouth and the intoxicating sensation of finally giving in. I had spent so long pretending, but with Damian, there was no hiding anymore. And I wasn't sure I wanted to. The tension was unbearable, coiled tight between us like a live wire ready to snap. Damian hovered above me, his breath ragged, his body pressed firmly against mine, a wall of heat and control I had no way of escaping, not that I wanted to. I was already his, and he knew it. His fingers moved with slow, agonizing purpose, sliding beneath the fabric of my shirt, teasing the bare skin underneath. Then, without warning, he ripped it open, the sound of buttons scattering across the desk sharp in the thick silence between us. I gasped, my chest heaving, but the only thing I saw was the hunger in his eyes. "No more games," he murmured darkly, his fingers grazing my exposed collarbone before trailing lower, tracing the faint tremor in my muscles. "No more lies." I swallowed hard, barely able to catch my breath before his mouth was on me again, open and claiming, his tongue hot and demanding as he kissed me deep, too deep. My head spun, my fingers clutching at the fabric of his shirt. But that wasn't enough. I wanted him closer. I tugged at his tie, fumbling with the knot, but Damian caught my wrists, his grip firm as he pinned them above my head. "So impatient," he murmured, his smirk dark and knowing. "Should I make you beg for it?" A whimper slipped from my lips, a sound I barely recognized as my own. Damian groaned, low and deep, and something in him snapped. With a sharp tug, he loosened his own tie, yanking it over his head before throwing it aside. His suit jacket followed, then the first few buttons of his dress shirt, revealing the hard planes of muscle underneath. I couldn't breathe. He was gorgeous, dangerous. And he was looking at me like he was about to devour me whole. His fingers found my waistband, teasing the fabric, and my body tensed in anticipation. "Tell me," he whispered, his lips grazing the shell of my ear, his breath hot against my skin. "Do you still want to run?" I met his gaze, my heart pounding so hard I swore he could hear it. "No." A dark, satisfied smirk curled on his lips. "Good." Then, with a sharp pull, the last barrier between us was gone, and I swore the world around me shattered. There was no turning back now. Not when he had torn away every last piece of my disguise. Not when I had never felt so alive. And as Damian pressed me down, his lips ghosting over mine, I realized something terrifying. I wanted to be his. Damian's grip was bruising, his hands sliding over my bare skin, hot and possessive. His breath was ragged against my throat, his lips tracing a burning path down my body. There was no hesitation anymore, no room for restraint. He was going to ruin me. And fuck, I wanted him to. Mine. The word was a low growl against my skin, his fingers digging into my hips as if he needed to brand the word into me. My head spun. My body arched. My breath hitched in my throat as Damian pressed closer, pinning me against the desk, his mouth moving in ways that sent fire licking down my spine. Every touch, every kiss, every brush of his lips against my skin made it harder to breathe. I had spent so long lying to him, pretending to be someone else. But there was no hiding now, not when he was tearing me apart. His lips crashed against mine again, hungry and unrelenting. His fingers curled into my hair, tilting my head back as he devoured every sound I made, swallowing every gasp like he owned them. And maybe he did, because God help me, I was completely his. Damian's hands explored, gripping my thighs, dragging me flush against him as his name slipped from my lips in a breathless whisper. He groaned, his voice low and wrecked. "Say it again." I did, over and over, because at that moment, nothing else existed. Nothing but his hands, his mouth, the way he took me like he had been waiting forever, like he had been starving for this. For me. And when he finally pushed me over the edge, my world shattered. I gasped his name, my fingers digging into his back, my body trembling beneath him. He followed me down, his lips brushing mine in a kiss so slow, so devastatingly tender, it made my chest ache. For the first time, I saw it. The truth behind his hunger. It wasn't just about desire. It was about me. It had always been about me. And as he held me there, his fingers tangled with mine, his forehead resting against mine, I knew. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Final lines for impact. I had lied to him. But the way he touched me, the way he needed me, that wasn't a lie. And I had no idea what that meant for us. But one thing was certain. Damian would never let me go. And that's how it ends or begins. Would you let your boss own you like this? Or would you run? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for even more dangerously addictive stories.